Welcome back to a 78 Camaro video here on ShopDog-Garage. Some parts are starting to roll in. We finally have our torque converter and a nice SFI flex plate. Some of the stuff to start putting together our Hydro Boost. The actual wires we're going to use, because I did decide right angle was the way to go. A starter. So what we're the start to some of our fuel system stuff. But what we're starting to work towards is getting the engine and trans mated and installed. So maybe that happens today, maybe it doesn't. We're cold, we're old, but let's see how far we get. Alright, so there's our torque converter, getting ready to verify that it mounts nicely to the flex plate before we mount the flex plate. And remember, it's only a little extra money. Go ahead and get the SFI rated stuff, because you don't get to replace your feet and your legs when your clutch lets go, or in this case your torque converter. So that's looking ready to go. Might as well make sure that's all going to line up and dig out some fluid, because pre-filling these is always a good idea. So we'll be right back. This is exactly why I like to do this off the car whenever you can. So since the converter is meant for multiple flex plates and our flex plate is meant for multiple applications, it looks like these fit, but they don't. The ones that did fit was this set, which I've marked, here on these flanges. So that looks like it fits perfect. So that's important information. Okay, so we've done some mesh testing. In fact, it's still kind of stuck out. Well, it's not out as much as it was. And we're happy with one shim. And the clocking will change based on the headers. We can't do that until it's in the car. But if you get a chance to test it, it's a lot easier now than it is wrestling that under the car. Because sometimes the starter sticks, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, so if you look way down in there, see that black thing on the top? There's 180 degrees out from it down here on the bottom. That's the pump. And that's what this has to drive. No, this is the stator, the stationary part. That's why it's called stator. And now we can't find the dipstick tube, because of course we can't. So I think in a little bit we're going to go see if I have some nice ones. I mean, we've got this one we found on an old transmission, but if I recall, these are definitely never fun to put into an F-body when the transmission is already installed. Well, and we have been scrambling for a dipstick tube. There's a reason this one was in my bucket. For whatever reason, this diameter is 760 mils instead of 750, when actually it should be like 745, which is what these two factory ones are. So we're going to go ahead and just order one that's correct. And that's okay. We had a couple questions for FTI. This sure looks like a freeze plug on the Speedo here. And it looks like they did a nice job here blocking this off, since this is, manually shifted. I want to get confirmation that that's a freeze plug and we can leave it, and we can just use a GPS based speedometer, or if that actually has to come out. And I think I'd rather not do that, knowing that that cross member is right here and the tunnel's right there if it's in the car. So as much as I don't want to, we're gonna wait to put this one in. Oh, and at some point we're gonna put these bottom bolts in too. He got them, I just haven't put them in yet. Everything pulled together, no problem. It just slid right on, and you'll see when you look under here that there's a nice air gap between the torque converter and the flex plate. And I'm actually getting ready to measure that, because it can only be between 90 and 187 mils. So I just grabbed a stack of washers, and I'm going to find a combination that's a kind of a snug-ish fit and measure it real quick. And in the spirit of test fitting, since obviously we didn't just end the video yet, we figured we would go ahead and test this mount out. But we're missing 2 bolts, so we're still looking for them. But on these And it says right in there to make sure you use it. Even though you see these two bumps sticking up, you got to use this safety plate. This does something. It says something about a safety interlock or something. So we just want to make sure all that's going to clear and check that. So, okay. I've got some temporary bolts in there, and you can see there's plenty of room for them to go up in. So, yeah, that's going to work. You can see he's got his painted cross member hanging here, so that also will fit. At the moment, I actually happen to have the mounting backwards. You know, the bump goes to the back. We're just mostly making sure that everything actually fits the spacing. Alright, so now we're pretty happy with that. And we happen to know that as long as this bolt lines up somewhere between here and here, it fits. Otherwise, we may have to gouge that a little. But something tells me it probably fits right where this swell is, because this is the factory cross member. So that's probably where she goes. Welcome back on the 78. It's a week later. Pretty sure I'm going to edit this all as one video, so if I didn't, sorry about that. I came back on Saturday, took a few more measurements, and we have a radiator on order. Thought it would be here today, but that's just not how shipping works anymore. So, is what it is. But tonight's goal is to get this in there. So, I know I've already verified all of that. I think I'm going to start with picking the car up, making sure we have found all the bolts for the cross member, and have that ready to go. Then we'll bring her back down and slide that in. It'll only take just a minute. Isn't that what we always say? Anyway, it'll take a minute, but let me get it warm in here. It's 40 in here. That's a little nippy for the fingers. Okay, so cross member goes here. There's two holes under here for you to get your nut in there, and then you're supposed to just drop a bolt on top. I want to find 4 matching bolts of sufficient strength that actually fit, because one of the problems when you're putting bolts in is always the room above it. So the worst spot is right here, and yet having it long enough to be useful. So I'm going to play with that, but I'd prefer a bolt like this with a flange head. That'll do the least amount of damage and also do a nice job of clamp loading. Alright, so got to tell the people that we found bolts that I like. Captive heads, so that we're not going to have any problems. And they just clear to go in. So we'll pull that out and go ahead and set the car back down. Okay, so we didn't like the quality of aftermarket stuff, so he restored the factory dipstick tube, and look at that, it fits. What more do you want? So we're gonna go with that, and then just getting ready to pick it up and see what our balance looks like. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and bolt the mounts on. He's digging out some nice new hardware. We'll get those clamshells on, and then something to notice, there is a right and a wrong way to rebuild these, so pay attention. If you don't do it right, that thing won't sit down, so that's important to know. Okay, mounts are on, tubes on. This valley's been cleaned because it's never going to be easier to get at than right now. So, yeah, I think we're going to go ahead and swing her in. Hopefully everything still fits. It's only been a week. Because no good deed goes unpunished. Even though we follow the instructions, something doesn't seem right here. And I got a feeling what they meant was this tab going up. But I don't know that yet. But you can see I could get this side on. No way on that side. So we're going to take a peek. This could suck. I'm not going to crawl on my belly to do the jack. We're just going to do the car this high. We have a magic machine that just picks it up higher and higher. So we'll just do it this way. Hopefully everything fits this time. I can't be the only person in the world that gets frustrated every time I buy Poly stuff. Because Here's an interesting conundrum. Remembering, this engine was in here with those mounts and those brackets with the factory rubber, not the poly. And no matter how much I finagle, I'm sure you notice a little issue here. How on earth am I ever going to get the pins in there? I'll fight it a little bit more. But man, that's definitely going to be under a little bit of stress. So this is frustrating. Aftermarket. Well, I always say aftermarket garbage is garbage, but even just aftermarket, it's so random sometimes. I just learned a thing. So the stock 78 mounts, that's about 2 3/4 in his pile of parts, and this is why you never throw things away. These 78 Blazer ones are 2 1/4. And I don't know if you're noticing, but I could totally get bolts in those. So we were trying to decide if we're going to sandblast and paint those and use those, or if we're going to go back to these nearly new, almost 50-year-old rubber mounts that also worked. So what I think is going on is I don't think this is in the same spot, you know, relative to the mount as the polys are. So there must be 2 different versions of these GM clamshells. Well, I bet there's probably more than that, but honestly, I hadn't paid much attention to them.
I love that one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What's this style? So here's another one just lying about. This looks like the short one, like the 2 1/4. What's it from?
Pickup.
90 pickup. So, yeah, and you can see how much different these two are. Yeah, look at this height compared to that. Well, we now know a thing we didn't know. We have decided that before we make a decision on the mounts, we want to check the fit of the headers. So I just threw tranny mount in temporarily. Doesn't mount where we thought it did, so that'll be fun. We'll deal with that later. But it's supporting the weight. The jack isn't actually holding anything now. We'll pull these spark plugs, and then we'll sling some headers in and just make sure that we're still happy with them. Okay, so we just popped the headers in. Once again, Headman, these just literally slid right in, both of them. So we got to bolt it on, 2 bolts on each. And even the gasket thickness isn't going to be that big of a difference. I don't like that. We're probably going to swap this bolt. Okay. Anytime in here, because holy monkeys. Yeah, I think I got a steering bolt I want to change. And man, other than that, and that's not the header's fault, that's this aftermarket stuff. Oh, look at that clearing the floor. Man. Clears the oil. Yeah, we spilled some when we were putting it in. Of course we did. Oh yeah, we got to do that at some point too. We got to put the converter in. Yeah, I mean, look at this clearance. Even like, we'll put some heat shield on that brake line as well as this brake line. But the only thing I don't like is this bolt. And that's, like I said, it's not Headman's problem. And honestly, I think all we'll do is just turn the bolt around. We can either cut the end of the bolt off or just turn it. Well, the upside to cutting the end of the bolt off is that if you had to service it, you wouldn't have to pull the headers. Yeah. So, yeah, we might pull that and just do a shorter bolt. Otherwise, you'd have to pull the headers if you ever had to pull the bolt. So, yeah, no, we'll do that. We'll just, when the headers are out, we'll just dick that down. And honestly, you could almost get away with it. I wouldn't, though. I would definitely trim that. You can see just tons and tons of room up top. Plenty of room around the pan. Yeah, I'm pretty happy. This fits good. And then remember all that time we spent with these 2 holes, and yet that's not where that wants to go. So I'm gonna have to figure out what it was mounted to. Must be bolts from above down in, so that ought to be fun. We'll get that figured out. Can't be the end of the world. But yeah, that's promising. I like that the headers just pop right in there. So yeah, you just don't see that every day. So I think I've made up my mind now that we're definitely going with these truck mounts. I just like the fit. This is nice. This fits really, really nice. Okay, so that's out again so that he can paint those mounts. In retrospect, we have no idea if any of the stuff that was in this car is original. So energy suspensions may be okay. What do you do? Anyway, we're going to continue going ahead. Just remember, aftermarket garbage is garbage. So hopefully next week we can put it in for real. A couple more things we want to look at before we wrap this up, so we'll be back. Okay, so we trimmed that bolt down and we went through all the thermal sleeve we have, and we didn't really have any, so we're gonna have to order some. We kind of thought we might. I thought I had some here. I may have some at home, but what I want to do is not have to pull this whole friggin' line to put sleeve on, so I want the stuff with the Velcro or the convoluted thermal wrap. So we'll get something. It's just one of those, just make sure. It probably would have been fine, but why boil off your brakes? So I think that's where we're at. Also, we're starting to think this isn't really the training cross member for this car, because that should mount up here and not here. So I don't know, it's what was in the car. Of course, this car had a 400 in it and didn't come from the factory that way, so you never know what someone's done. But not sure that I'm super stoked with how it's mounted, so we'll look at that a little bit more. And look at that, riv nuts right from the factory, because they work. So anyway, that's all we're gonna get done this week. I think that's more than enough for this to be a pretty long video. So please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. We'll toss over to ShopRex, and thanks for watching. This has been another ShopRex approved video.